Okay, welcome back. The last pause and practice from chapter 4 deals with pivot tables, which is like really one of the number one things on the list of employers that we discuss in management roles that they want their employees that know Excel and have to use Excel to be able to do. So we're going to introduce it. We don't get a lot into this, but at least you'll know what it is and how they work. But a pivot table is defined as a cross-tabulation report based on list type data, which like we're looking here with revenue. It is a separate worksheet. It allows us to do sorting, filtering, and calculating large amounts of data. And I like to tell students that this allows us to do our summaries and very quickly, and also it's interactive, so you can change it very quickly and look at the data different ways. Right here we're looking at all of the data together, so the pivot table is going to allow us to summarize it and break it down into sections to look at it a different way. So this is important part of what's called business intelligence, and this is defined as a combination of applications and processes that allows us to drill down into data and assess various types of results of change. So BI, as it's called, is a big thing right now with big data. And being able to look at data all together can be sometimes overwhelming, so you have to be able to break it down into usable pieces, and pivot tables allow us to do that. So we're going to create one, and then we're going to see how we can manipulate it and look at the data a different way. So this is the data that we're going to create a pivot table on. So I put it in the beginning, which is A4, and we're going to go to our Insert tab. And what we look at right over here under Tables, we can create a pivot table from scratch, or we have what's called Recommended. This one we're going to do a recommended one. It selects our data for us, which is great. And the one that we're going to do is the sum of amount by location. Sum of amount by location, which is what we're looking at here. And that's the preview. So we're going to click OK. By default, it creates a new sheet for us. And I'm going to just go down here and name it Pivot Table. Okay, so as you can see what this did, and notice my pane missed over here, but once I click in here, this is what it's set up for us. So we have it broken down by location. So you notice that these numbers would have matched our subtotal numbers that we did when we did the subtotal exercise. And now you might be saying, okay, why don't we do subtotals? Well, you'll see here in just a minute because of how we can use these areas to make this more interactive. But before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to add a slicer in here. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the category field from our choose fields, which that's right up here, category. I'm going to drag this down to our columns and watch what happens. So it breaks it out. So not only do we have our grand total, which we saw just a minute, it gave us a breakdown by each of those different categories. The check mark is there, our columns are here, and our locations are broken up by rows. So you got a multitude of ways of looking at our data. Okay, so that's added now to our pivot table. Now another thing that we can do that we want to be able to do is under Pivot Table Tools Analyze, we want to go to our filter group. We're going to insert a slicer. And we're going to do this one based upon our classification, so we can break this data down even further. And we click OK. Okay, so this isn't even part of it, but we can take those totals and break it down by the different categories of associate, manager, or otherwise. So I'm going to put this kind of under here. Okay. All right. So that's one of the things that we can do as well. Okay, so let me kind of extend these a little bit. All right. Now we're in pretty good shape. So if I click on one, you can see how it pulls out and shows me just the associates numbers, or the managers, or the representatives. If I hold my control key, I could do managers and representatives, any combination that I want. And then I can clear the filter. Very handy when you're wanting to look at a multitude of data. Okay, now here's the one. Now, if I told you I wanted to format these numbers, a lot of you would want to click and drag and go set these up. But remember, these numbers change all the time. So in a pivot table, here's how you format numbers. You right-click on any of these numbers, and we're actually going to go down here to Value Field Settings. We get this dialog box. Okay, and down in the lower left is our number format. Now here's where you set that information up. So we're going to set it up as currency, no decimal places, and click OK. And then you click OK again. And there they are. So don't get caught in the trap of formatting this like you normally would. You have to use the right-click method to be able to do that. Here's something else you can do on this. When you have a pivot chart created, then you can also, under Pivot Table Tools, Analyze, we can create a pivot chart, which is right over here. So we're going to click on that. We choose which chart, which is much like in Chapter 3. We're going to do a clustered column, which is given to us, and click OK. And it's embedded. You'll notice we have the sum of amount, location, and category, which identifies our pivot table. So it's a little bit different than a regular chart that we've done, because we got some quick interactive tools that we can use. But we do have our pivot chart tools format. So I'm going to go to the design, and I'm going to go to layout, and I'm going to choose layout 3. I'm going to select that chart title. Just like before, we can go to the formula bar. I'm going to give it a new name, revenue by category. Press enter. And then I'm going to position this up here. Now here's what's kind of cool about this, is that as I choose my slicer, not only does my numbers change, but so does the pivot chart. If I click the category right here, I can also do this, and I can do filters here as well. And I'm going to select excursions and rentals, and that filters it down as well. So what managers will do all the time is they'll take the data in its totality and they'll start analyzing it different ways and be able to make better business decisions. So that's the purpose of pivot charts and pivot tables. Those can be created from scratch as well. You also have the ability to create what's called a calculated field, and that's in your textbook. And in terms of that, where that's located, it's up here under, if I'm in my chart and I go to Analyze, we have the ability to go under Filled Items and Sets and create a calculated field, which will allow you to do some additional ways of doing some other totals or things like that. So you might run into that as well. So very cool technology. We just introduced it here, but it's really a must at least to have the basics down. That takes care of number 4. You've seen everything in this chapter now, so you are ready to dive in and reinforce through your sim book and start tackling your projects. Good luck.